Okay, let's get things started here. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Financing Your Education 102. My name is Andrew, and I'm an Enrollment Services Advisor with the Office of the Registrar. I'm joined today by Ben, who will be in the chat and helping things out. Please do feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we'll answer what we can in the moment. We will save some space towards the end for some questions and answers, and we'll be able to answer some general questions. But if you have specific questions related to your own circumstances, please do contact us directly, and we'll have that information included a little later on. Before we jump into the content today, I would first like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, located in the heart of southern Alberta, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So in our previous session, we went over applying for government student aid and some award information. You will be able to find that session uploaded on our website if you happened to miss it. For today, we're going to first discuss your fee assessment and go over what you are charged when you attend UCalgary. We'll also take a look at the tools available in the My Financial section of the Student Center. And then we'll discuss how to process or collect letters or signatures to pull funds from your RESP, a Registered Education Savings Plan. We'll discuss setting up a third-party sponsorship. And finally, we'll discuss the payment plans and your options for making payment for these fees. Students are assessed tuition on a term-by-term basis. The tuition that you're charged goes directly to the faculty offering the course or program. It's how faculties, instructors, and the facilities required for instruction are all funded. Undergraduate students, so probably most of the folks we have here today, are assessed tuition based on their course enrollment. The cost per course varies by the faculty offering the course. So something offered through the Haskayne School of Business or the Schulich School of Engineering are a little bit more expensive than courses offered through the faculties of arts or sciences, just reflecting the differences in instruction and the relative costs there. Each course has a fee rate group, which you can see examples of some of the fee groups here in the screenshot from the academic calendar. Now, graduate students can be in either a thesis-based or a research program or in a course-based program. Like undergraduate programs, course-based grad programs are assessed tuition on the courses that they actually enroll in, based on the fee rate group. Students completing thesis programs are usually assessed a set amount of tuition per term or per year. The exact fee rate group you would fall under can depend on when you started the program. Students who have been in their programs for several years may fall under a lower legacied tuition rate. You can see the specific fee rate group a course falls under in the class details, either in the visual schedule builder or through searching the class details through the course search function in the Student Center. The primary thing that we're wanting to communicate here is that your tuition is directly related to your course enrollment or program progression. Adding or dropping classes will directly impact the fees that you're responsible for. In addition to tuition, students are also assessed general fees. These fees fund specific programs and are directly allocated to support broader student services. Most of the general fees that you are assessed are mandatory and fund essential services across the campus. The student services fee here funds things like the Wellness Center, student success, and even enrollment services ourselves. The student union fees fund various programs offered through the SU, like the radio station or the newspaper, or their law programs, or their volunteer programs. The campus recreation fee funds the active living program, and by having that fee assessed, you do get access to their services and facilities. And the athletics fee there funds the Dinos athletic program. All of these 4 fees are assessed on a term-by-term basis. So every term where you're enrolled at the university, you will see those fees assessed in addition to the tuition. Some fees that we have here are considered optional. Both the student donation and the health and dental plan fees are optional, with a little bit more detail on that in a moment. The health and dental plan is assessed on an annual basis. So they're assessed once per year and then grants access to that for a full year. So for most folks, you'll see that fee assessed in fall. And then for your second year, you'll see that fee assessed again in the fall. There are a few differences on the graduate side of things. There have more fees assessed on an annual basis. We do have some QR codes here to the academic calendar, and Ben's provided that in the chat as well. These optional fees can be opted out through the Student Center, though there are a few things to be aware of. The donation is optional, but it is used to fund bursaries for students in need, primarily the Student Peer Assistance Bursary. If you do decide to opt out of that fee, you are limited in how much of that bursary you can receive. The maximum amount you can receive from that bursary is $1,500. However, if you have a history of opting out of the donation, you're limited to 50%, so a maximum of $750. And as I said, you can opt out of the health and dental fees as well, but there are some limitations on that. You do need to have extended coverage already, whether that be through a parent or a spouse or perhaps an employer. If you don't have alternative extended coverage, then these fees would be considered mandatory. And then you would be able to opt out of these fees through the Student Center in the My Financials section, which we'll look in a little bit more detail in a moment, through the links we have highlighted here. The My Financial section of the Student Center is your primary resource for all information regarding your fees. This is our primary way of communicating what fees are owed, if there's any issues regarding fees, past due fees, that kind of a thing, that all gets communicated through this part of the student portal. This section outlines all charges assessed, payments received, and any other financial activity, including awards you might have received or government student loans. This is where you'd be able to access your account history, access receipts, tax forms, and more. At the top of the page in the My Financial section, the first thing we'll point out is the account summary. That's going to detail all current, past, and future due fees. Due dates are based on the term fee deadline. So for instance, all of your fees assessed for the fall will be considered due for September 22nd, where your fees for the winter semester are considered due January 26th. That next table down will show a term-by-term breakdown. And this will also separate out your academic charges, your tuition and general fees, and your residence charges, your room fees and meal plan. A negative number here, whether in the UO side or within the specific terms, a negative number would indicate that there is a credit on the account, that there is an overpayment. These credits can be refunded back to you by request through manually requesting the refund, or they'll automatically apply to future term fees. So if you overpay for your fall semester, the excess balance will just automatically carry forward to any fees assessed in the winter. If there's no fees for a payment to allocate towards, it'll be on there as a credit, which you can then request to have refunded back to you. The account activity is a running ledger of the student account. Every charge and payment made will be reflected here, organized by date chronologically. Not all charges get assessed at the same time. So it's often recommended to filter the table down to show either a specific range of dates or to pull the charges for a specific term. If you do opt out of some of the optional fees, you're not going to see the line item, the charge itself removed, but you're going to see an offsetting payment. We'll put a payment on the account that matches the charge that was assessed so that it just zeroes it out. And this is all just for accounting purposes. One of the main things that you're going to need from the My Financials section, which is pretty relevant now, is the proof that a particular payment was made. You can pull the official receipt, again, through the receipts link there, but it can also be helpful to review the payments link to see how that payment was applied to your account. The receipts that we offer only really prove that a specific payment was received on a specific date. It doesn't necessarily show how that payment was allocated. So depending on, you might need to be showing how payments are allocated for a parent or an employer. You might need to supplement the receipt by using the payments link to show exactly what happened to those funds. But usually the receipt itself is sufficient. Now, the term account summary, to help make all this clear, we have the term account summary available as well. This will break down all of the fee and payment activity for the term into a single document. So if you're getting funds from multiple resources, or if you have a complicated funding scenario, this can be a very good resource to stay on top of the account activity. Now, this isn't intended as an official invoice or an official document to be submitted towards third parties. This document doesn't include the university stamp or seal, and it's not signed. However, this is like the single best resource to show the details of your charges and payments in a singular document, something that can be supplied to parents or employers to show what's going on with the charges in the term. For most students, the preferred and recommended method of payment is through your online banking from a Canadian bank account. Students who do not yet have a Canadian bank account can pay their fees through the international partners that we have, Convera Global Pay or CIBC Student Pay. It is recommended for both domestic students and international students to have their own Canadian bank account to make those payments directly. You can access the payment options webpage, the last one that Ben had linked here, through the Student Center in the top right of the My Financial section, just to access those instructions for making payment as well. Now, when you are making payment through Canadian online banking, you're going to have to set up a payee, and then you're going to be making payments towards that particular payee. There's going to be one listed in your bank for academic charges, for tuition and general fees, and another listed there for residence charges, for room fees and meal plans. Through all of the methods of payment, you would have to pay your academic charges to the academic payee and your residence charges to the residence payee. If we make all of the payment towards one of the accounts, that's okay. We can always correct that after the fact, but we do want to make sure we're making those payments correctly, because it can take some time to correct those scenarios. We did talk about it a little bit, but your fees are always due term by term, regardless of program. The term fee deadline is set in place by the academic calendar so that once you finalize your enrollment for the term at the registration deadlines, you can then make a payment which would then be received around the term fee deadline. For the fall, the last day you can drop a class from your schedule is September 14th, and the last day to add is September 15th. So this means by September 15th, your schedule is going to be finalized for the term. Then you would pop into the My Financial section and then make a payment for the total fees that have been assessed. Because it can take 3 to 5 business days for a payment to process and make its way over to us, if you make your payment right when registration closes, everything is received by the time we get to the deadline. Now it's worth discussing. If a payment is not received by the term fee deadline, there are some financial and administrative consequences. But I will highlight here that there are no academic repercussions for late payment. Whether you pay late or at all, in fact, students will stay enrolled in all current and future classes, can attend exams, submit final projects. Our penalties are delayed and only get serious if payment isn't received for several months. So there's wiggle room built in if we have complicated scenarios or delays in funding. So you should be prepared if we're late in payment to be assessed late interest. This will assess at 1% of the principal owing per month. This does not accumulate on itself, so it's only ever 1% of the principal. The other thing to be aware of is the service hold. While fees are owing, a hold is placed on your account that will prevent registration in future terms and also prevents us from issuing transcripts. So in that way, we don't impact your current registration, but we do put a hold on you continuing until you've made payments for the past due fees. And also do note that if things are significantly delayed over 120 days, then information can be forwarded to a collections agency. So a registered education savings plan is like a savings account that your parents may have set up that they've been making contributions for several years. Now that you're in post-secondary, you might have an RESP that you or your parents need to withdraw funds from. These usually require some type of document that proves that you are a student with UCalgary. If your RESP provider has supplied you with a form that needs to be signed by a representative of the university, you will be able to submit the document to us through the service requests in the Student Center. And we would generally turn these requests around within 3 to 5 business days. So you can just digitally upload the document to us, we'll complete it. Once we complete it, you would get an email notification, and then you'd be able to pull the completed document through the service request. If your RESP provider does not have their own form and they've just requested some proof of your registration, they're likely going to require the confirmation of registration letter. This letter is freely available for download in the Student Center and is the official document that verifies you as an enrolled student with UCalgary. And you can access that through the Program and Advising Info tab of the Student Center. And please note that we can only confirm your status as it is at that point in time. So if you're waitlisted in classes, you technically aren't enrolled, so they aren't contributing to like your academic load, your full or part-time status. So we can't include that info on a form. We can't verify your enrollment if you're not fully enrolled. So as a general rule, only pull the letter once you have finalized your enrollment for the terms in question. So a third-party sponsorship is available if your fees are going to be covered in full or in part by an external agency. This is available for government agencies, companies, or Indigenous groups that might be covering a student's fees. This is the only way that a formal invoice would be issued from the University of Calgary. And individual people cannot act as a sponsor. To set up a sponsorship, students need to produce a letter from their sponsor outlining several key details. Then they would submit this letter on a term-by-term basis. You set up a sponsorship for fall, and then you set up a sponsorship for the winter, and then do the same thing in the next year and the next year. We have included here a template example, which is available on the website as well. Once students have that letter uploaded, they would upload it to us for review through the service requests, again, in the Student Center. And as I said, a new letter must be submitted for each term for an invoice to be generated. Once the application for a third-party sponsorship is approved, the account is adjusted to reflect the sponsorship after the term fee deadline. So if you submit the sponsorship documents to us, we'll get things processed. And then after the term fee deadline, we'll put a placeholder payment on the account. And then your fees are, by that point, the responsibility of the sponsor to pay. Okay, and then the payment plans. You do have an option to opt in to have your tuition and general fees paid in installments over the term, rather than them being all due at once on the term fee deadline. This is exclusive to academic charges, tuition and general fees. Residence fees can't be included in these payment plans. Undergraduates and course-based graduate students, when they opt into the payment plan, it will spread the tuition and general fees into 3 installments. So instead of owing all of the funds for September 22nd, you would owe 1/3 at the end of September, 1/3 at the end of October, and 1/3 at the end of November. or 2 installments through the spring and summer semesters. Graduate students in thesis-based programs have 4 installments through the fall and winter, and graduate students in thesis programs are not assessed the administrative fee. The administrative fee is $40 for fall and winter, or $20 in spring and summer. So again, if we have a complicated funding scenario, or if we know that we're going to be delayed in having our funds all in hand, perhaps through delays in student aid or in transferring money from overseas, the payment plan is a decent option to mitigate the impact of late payment, giving a little bit more time before those holds and late interest start to become too heavy. Enrollment in the payment plan is open now, so 30 days prior to the start of the term. That was been open since August 1st. And then the winter payment plan enrollment would open up around the beginning of December. The deadline to opt into the payment plan is the fee payment deadline. So by September 22nd, we effectively need to have a plan in place to pay your fees. If we know there's going to be a delay and can't pay in line with that deadline, the payment plan is here to provide a little bit of flexibility on that side of things. In all things, you are not alone. Sometimes these things can get pretty complicated. So if you do have questions as we're getting things planned, or as we're getting into the semester, you can connect with us regarding pretty well anything. We are responsible for advising on financial aid and awards, registration, and the student record generally, or most things through the Student Center. But even if it's outside of our scope, we can always refer you on to the folks who can assist. So it's never a bad idea to reach out to us if you do have questions. Speaking of, this is now that time where we can answer questions if anyone does have any. If you don't have questions, we went through things pretty quick here. Thank you very much for patiently listening through all this. If you do have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat and we'll respond.